Testing one, two. Are we live? Oh my gosh, I cannot believe that this is happening. Hey guys, welcome. I am Eva Salas and I am your host for this podcast, the Shine Your Light podcast. I want to officially welcome all of you to this new journey that we are about to start together. And I am super excited. I cannot wait to see everything that God does, that God speaks, that God provides through this podcast. And I am just excited to be part of it. Honestly, never in my life would I have ever thought that I was going to be here. Social media, podcast, or any of the sort was never in my plans, but here we are. You and I just talking to each other about someone who is so amazing, someone like God. So, welcome. I am so happy that you are joining us today. This is a very tough, I would say, episode because it's the beginning. It's like, what do I do? Where do I go? What do I say? Do I breathe? Do I blink? There's a lot of emotions, but I'm just glad that we finally got here. So, for today, I really just want to talk to you guys about me, who I am, about this podcast, and how we're getting there, how we got here, and what you can expect. So, as many of you guys know, my name is Ava. I am currently living in South Florida, but I am originally from Honduras. Yo nací en Honduras, pero me vine cuando tenía 5 años. I was born in Honduras, but I actually came to the United States when I was 5 years old. At that time, it was only me, no Rachel, no Caleb, nothing. It was only me. But yes, later along, my siblings came, and that's how where we are today. So, I was actually born into a Christian household. My parents have been Christian their whole life. They've been serving in ministry, in leadership, and doing a lot of things, honestly. And something that I love to mention is that the day that I was actually born, my mom was leading worship at church. So, not to toot my own horn, but I think that's one of the reasons that I love worshiping. I love singing. I love music. I love everything that has to do with singing to God and praising God and worshiping God. So that's a little fun fact about me. So, like I mentioned, I was born into a Christian household. I have been in church my entire life. I started leading worship at my church when I was around 6, 7 years old. And by the time I was like around 9, 10, I was actually leading worship for the adults. So it's something that I've been doing my entire life. I've been working with the kids ministry and the youth ministry at a local level, but also at a higher level with other churches. And it's something that it has just taught me to love people more, to love God more, and just brought me closer to Him and His love. Um, I actually didn't have an encounter with Jesus until I was about 16 or 17 years old. That's what I always say because I think many of us are born into a Christian household, and it's not that we're forced to do things, but it's just the way that we've been raised. So we're born into a Christian household. We're taught to go to church. We're taught to read our Bible. We're taught to do all of these things, but we don't question it because that's just normal for us until we reach a certain age, let's say high school or college, where we start exploring and see other cultures and seeing other people how they do stuff. I think that's when the real trial begins for young adults and the youth in general, to see if they're really following God because their parents are following God or because they truly want to. So that's how it happened with me. I remember I was finishing middle school, starting high school, and I was starting to go into the wrong ways, but Jesus came and thank God He saved me. And that's a testimony for another episode. I know that you guys have been wanting that. So it's not something that I've really spoken out loud, but hey, this is a safe space, right? This is a space for all of us to talk. So, I remember that's how I really had an encounter with God. That was around 16 or 17 years old, like I said. And around the same time was when my parents started pastoring. I remember it was pretty weird because I know we had been serving at our church forever, but Starting our own church was like a scary thing, and that was a big responsibility. I remember that I like I told you, I loved music, but there came a point where I had to learn another instrument. I had to learn the piano, for example, and I had to do all of these things. And I wouldn't change a thing now, but it was a very um learning experience. It was a learning experience. It was tough at times, but the one who calls us equips us. So I don't know if this is for someone out there. If God told you to do something, don't worry about what's to come. Don't worry about the finances. Don't worry about the resources because He is not questioning whether you have money or whether you have the resources or whether you have the intellect to do these things. When God tells you to do something, what He is testing is your faith. How strong is your faith? Remember, faith is believing in something that you're not seeing yet. So, having faith that God is going to equip us and prepare us, that's where the real test is. So, we said yes. We said, Amen, Lord. Call us. Here we are. We're here to serve you. We started that, and that was about 9 years now. It's gonna be 9 years in May. And what can I say? It has been a journey. If you are a PK, if you're a pastor's kid, you understand. You understand the struggle. It has been real. We have learned a lot. I've learned a lot about people, personalities. We've learned about trust. We've learned about a lot of things, but through it all, God has been good. God has been faithful. God has been surprising us in so many ways. And around that time was when I also graduated high school. And I remember that a few years later, I think we were about 4 years into the ministry when bam, COVID hit. And it was like, wow, what do we do? We are new at this, and now we can't even meet in person. And there was just a lot going on. I remember that year I also graduated college and I got my associates actually. I got my associate's degree and I had to finish it online because circumstances. So I remember that we were doing everything online, and during that time was when everyone went into the wave of TikTok. And I don't know. I kind of say this proudly in a way, but I was like, it's like I had this chip over my shoulder and I was like, yeah, you guys can go along with TikTok. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna be dancing like crazy. That is not for me. That's for like kids, and I'm just not about that. So I can proudly say that I did not download TikTok in 2020. I did not press that button. I did not make an account. I didn't do anything. And I don't know why. I felt so good about that. Like, there were, I don't know, there were things going on, but I was like, the world may be ending, but I am not about to make an account just to dance for people and do silly things. I don't know. That was my thought. But God definitely has other plans for us, you know? So 2020 came to an end, and I was proud to say that I didn't download TikTok. Months later, I did move to Orlando, and that is when everything started. I remember I was like, okay, you know what? It seems like the wave is going down. Everything is coming down again, becoming normal. I guess I will download TikTok. And at that point, I didn't do it for, you know, to become, like a TikToker or to become someone who's gonna dance and whatnot. No, I solely did it to just out of curiosity, honestly. I did it out of curiosity and I was like, let me see what really happens. How does this happen? Like what do they do? I had no idea what TikTok was. And I remember I did have Instagram. I did have, honestly, that's and Snapchat. Those were the two only social media platforms that I used at that time. But I downloaded TikTok, and then after a few days, I remember I posted something and I posted something again and the next day. And what did I post? If you go all the way down, you'll see that I started posting daily motivational verses. And that was like an everyday thing. That was very random, but very out of the blue. I didn't even show my face. It was just some pictures that I created and I posted them. And you know how TikTok was all video? I mean, still is. But I was posting graphics, I was posting photos, I was posting just these verses. And that's where it started. I remember I was like, okay, I guess I could do this. I mean, if I'm gonna do something here on earth, it's gonna be showing the love of God. It's gonna be proclaiming the love of God. So that's where it started. I started posting just motivational verses, and I did that for quite some time. Not even showing my face, not showing my personality or my voice. And then I remember one day And then I remember one day I actually made a video talking. And that was a video of me just honestly transitioning the motivational verses into talking videos. And I remember I was in my room all alone and I was so nervous because I was like, but I see these people, they have ring lights, they have all these equipment, they have this, they have that, and I don't have anything. Like I literally just have my phone and that's it. But that's how it started. That's what God wanted, like I just said, when God calls you, just use what's in your hands, use what you have now, forget about the rest, forget about tomorrow, forget about yesterday, or oh man, I was in a better situation last year, why couldn't I do it? No, if God told you to do that thing today, it's because he wants you to do it today. He didn't want you to do it yesterday, last year. He didn't want you to wait until tomorrow. He wants you to do it today because he has a reason, because he has a purpose. So I remember that night I was like, okay, you know what? Fine, I'll do a talking video. And that's where it started. And then all of a sudden, the followers came, and people were like, thank you so much. I can relate to this. I honestly needed this word. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this is happening. Like, I was definitely not expecting this. I did not create a TikTok account so I could become viral or so I could just become famous. That never crossed my mind and still never crosses my mind. Like everything I do on social media is purely out of love. It's genuine content that I just want to share with people without any double meaning. So, at that time, I was in Orlando living over there. And I was at the University of Central Florida studying. And I remember that then I got the opportunity to go live. And that's where I met many, many, many of you. Like today, a lot of the followers that I have are with me from way back then. And honestly, thank you. This everything would never have been possible without you. You guys are my motivation, my inspiration. You guys are why I do all of this, because I know that there's people out there who really love Jesus just like I do and really enjoy sharing and laughing together and just creating these special moments. So by that time I had the opportunity to go live, and I was like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? Okay, I finally showed my face, but what am I supposed to do in these lives? So since I had free time, I did go to school, I did work, but then at night it was just me. I didn't really talk to my roommates. I was like, okay, what do I do? How do I do this? And then I just started going live, and it would be just talking to you guys, or it would just be listening to worship music, and we would create playlists. And then I remember having prayer nights as well. We also had devotional nights where we would just read, and that was such a beautiful time. Like, something that I always say is never take a moment for granted, because there may be so many things, honestly, that can happen in only one season of your life. Many times we are expecting for the next season to come. We're waiting, we're preparing. But what about that season that you're in right now? Like, what about that season that God is using right now for you, for your benefit. We're so caught up in this culture of expecting and waiting and thinking about what's next, that we forget about the present. We forget about today. And something that I always say is cherish what you have right now. Cherish what you have today. Cherish where you are and the people that you have, because these things don't come back. This day, today will never in history come back. So I remember those nights were just so calm and soothing, and it was something that I expected. It was something that I really looked forward to. And that's where a lot of you were like, this is so nice. Do you have a podcast? You should start a podcast. But I was like, oh my God, wait, we're moving too fast. We're moving way too fast. Hold your horses. Wait, let's take let's take a breath. So, you guys had mentioned it, and I was like, yeah, yeah, we'll work on that. We'll work on that. Mind you, that was back in like end of 2021, 2022. That is when the idea surged, and that is when the idea came to life. So, I had the intentions all along of doing it, but I really wanted it to be because God said so, not because I wanted to. I wanted this podcast to be something intentional from God, not something for show for the people. I wanted all along this podcast to be something that would be beneficial and something that would bless people's lives, not just be for entertainment on social media. So I prayed from that moment on. I asked for confirmation. I was always even asking people like, hey, can you help me pray for this, because it's something that I want to do, but I just don't want to do it out of, emotions, or just because I am motivated right now to do a podcast, so let's go ahead and do a podcast. No, I wanted it to be something really from God. And I remember at one point I was talking to one of my roommates, and it's so crazy because God prepares you from like years before, and you don't see what God is doing in your life until years later. And it's all about trusting God. Like, just trust the process. You know how sometimes girls are doing their makeup and they're just like putting a whole bunch of paint and stuff in their face, and you're like, what are you doing? You look like a clown. But it's all about the process. It's all about the process. It's just like that with God. Like, many times, many times, we are in the middle of a preparation. We are in the middle of God doing something in our life, and we don't even know it. We don't even acknowledge it until 5, 10 years later. And then we're like, oh my goodness, God told me that 5, 10 years, like 10 years ago. And that's so crazy that I just realized this now. Why? Because we don't have the mind that God has. We don't work the same way. God is unique, God is special, but let me tell you that He is working. Even if you don't see it, even if you don't hear Him, He's working. So I remember talking to my roommate in our kitchen one time, and she was like, hey, Eva, I want to give you a gift, but I don't really know what to give you. And I had been asking God, God, what do I give Ava? I want to give her something that really just speaks who she is, and I want to give her something that really just shows who she is. And she as she told me this, I was like, okay, that's so nice, like you're doing all of this for a simple gift. But she was like, yeah, and I just heard God telling me light, light, she is light, light. And I was like, oh, okay, light, so maybe I should get her something with light. And she said that she went to the store and she looked for something, and she found something that I carry to this day, and something that has a lot to do with all of you guys in this podcast. And I actually have it right here. So she brought me this wooden frame, and it says be the light, Matthew 5:14. And Matthew 5:14 to 16 is a special verse that I cherish to this day. And it started all the way back there. And she said, be the light. wherever you go, just be the light, shine your light because you have a light within you. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Thank you. But little did I know that God was starting to work all the way to now. So that passed and I saved that, and that just stayed with me. Um so years passed and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do the podcast, but I never like really put any intention in it, and I never really like put any thought into it. I prayed for it. It was always right there in my prayers, but it wasn't something that I was like, okay, I need to do this today, today, today. And I remember that my friends would speak and my friends would tell me about this. And I was like, yeah, yeah, no, 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 I'm getting to it. I'm getting to it. And even like my followers, when I did lives or when I did questions like, when's the podcast coming? When's the podcast coming? We're super excited. We really want to hear you and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, why so much pressure? And I remember one day, I think this was a couple months ago, I was in the car and I'm a radio girly. I listen to the radio all day. Like, yes, I'll put on my music, but I don't know. I like to feel like I'm listening to someone instead of just a recording. I like to listen. What are the news, or what's the weather, or what's happening around the world, or I like that. So I remember that morning, I had not even thought about the podcast. And at that point, the guy was like, okay, so this is the verse of the day. And the verse, yep, it was Matthew 5:14 to 16. And he was like, yeah, you got to be light. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. That's the same verse that I have in my room. Oh, that's so funny, God. And I was like, okay. And he kept talking about that. And then later on, a song came on. And it was a song about shining your light and shining what you have within you. And I was like, okay, that's so funny. Like, I know there can be a lot of songs playing, but there's just, when something is hitting different. You know when God is doing something in the middle of everything. So I was like, okay, God, that I get it. I get it. And it was so funny because I was driving alone in the car, but I was like, okay, God, I get it. I literally blurted it out. And later that day, I'm in the car again and I'm listening to the radio, and one of the ladies starts to talk about a devotional, starts to talk about us not waiting for tomorrow to do something that God has told us to do today. And she's like, each one of us has a purpose. Each one of us has a calling. Each one of us has a word for us to go out there and speak. But we cannot be waiting for that next day. We cannot be waiting for something to happen. We cannot be waiting to be ready. No, if God told you something, you have to do it today. You cannot be waiting for tomorrow. So I remember listening to that and I was like, okay, I see. And by that point, I was just like, I get it. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know I need to do this. So let's go for it. Let's go for it. But weeks passed, I think months passed, and still nothing. And I was like, I was at this point where I was like, God, if you really want me to do this, you need to provide. Because how many times do we like put conditions on God and we're like, okay, God, if you really want me to do this, then you have to do that. Or if you really want me to do this, you have to bless me with that. If you really want me to go forward, you have to show me, tell me, guide me, take me. You have to do everything. Okay, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do? But it's funny because even when you put all of these conditions on what God has told you to do, He still does it. Why? Because it's going to fulfill everything that you have to do. It's going to happen whether you want it or whether you like it, or whether you want it one way or another. It's going to happen. So I was like, God, if you really want me to do this, you need to give me a microphone. You need to give me the equipment. You need to give me the camera. You need to give me like everything because I don't have anything. And I am a content creator and I create content for brands. And it was funny because one day they were like, a brand, they're like, oh, can you record for a microphone? And I was like, a microphone, but that I don't even record for things like that. and they sent me over a microphone, and I was like, that is funny, but okay, I'll do it. And I get to keep the stuff, so I kept it. And then I was like, okay, fine. I guess I have the microphone now, but I want a cute setup. Like I want a cute chair. I want something cute to sit and have in the background. And I saw all these cute chairs online and podcasts where people had nice setups, and I was like, my gosh, they're cute, but they're so expensive. And I remember one day I went to Target and I was just walking by. I went to get, I think it was to get some bins, and I was like, let me go by the chairs to see how they look like, to see if they have anything. But I didn't go trying to buy something right on the spot. So when I went, I saw this really cute chair just in the middle of nowhere, and I was like, oh my God, this is cute. I wonder how much it is. And I asked one person, she's like, oh yeah, I just saw that it popped up there today, but it doesn't have a price. And but I'll help you. So I was like, okay, yeah, sure. So she looked and looked and looked, couldn't find a price. She called another guy. The guy couldn't find a price. The guy called another girl, and the girl was like, oh yeah, I came in this morning and it just miraculously appeared there. And I was like, oh, it's starting to click. It's starting to click. Okay, okay, that's not just miraculously, that's a miracle happening. Okay, so by that point the girl was like, do you really want this chair? And I was like, I mean, if it's a price that I can handle, yeah, if it's a decent price, I'll take it. And she went into her phone and she started checking up, and she's like, wait a minute. And I'm like, what? And she said, this chair, we don't even do this chair, we don't even sell this chair, but it says here that they're like around $1,500. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I don't need it. I was just wondering. And she's like, but you can take it to guest services and they can help you over there to see if they can give you a price, because it doesn't have a price here and we don't sell it. So I was like, okay, I'll take a picture of it and I'll take it." And she said, no, 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 take it, take it. And I'm like, but I don't want to take it and then what if I don't want it? I don't want you to be carrying it back and forth. And then at that moment, I felt something within me that was like, where's your faith? Where's your faith? Because how many times do we see God doing things in front of us and we're still doubtful and we're still like, nah, this can't be, like, that can't be happening. I know I prayed for it like for a whole year, but it can't. It's too good to be true. It's too good. So when I felt that, I heard God like, where's your faith? Don't you have faith? Is this not what you prayed for? So I was like, you know what? Okay, yes, God, you're right. I'll take it right now, because you have to act. You can pray for something, but you have to act as well. You have to back up that prayer with action, or else it won't work. Many times we're like, okay, God, I need my finances to get better. I need to accomplish. But what are you doing? Are you planning on accomplishing and being successful just sitting in your couch watching TV? It's not going to happen that way. So I told the guy, yeah, yeah, take it with me. And when I got up there, the guy was like, I guess these range like $200. I guess we could leave it at 160. And I was like, okay. And I had already made the math. I had already done the math. I was like, these on Amazon are about this price and blah blah. So I was like, and I saw that there's like a 50% off. Can you apply that to this? And he's like, did it say all furniture? And I was like, I'll take a picture of it. I'll take a picture of it, and you let me know if yes or no. And I went and I took a picture and I brought it back, and he's like, um well, I mean, I guess I could apply it. And I was like, okay, so can you do 160 with a 50% off then? And is that your best price? Because I mean, it's the only one. They don't know where it came from. And I was like trying to negotiate, And he's like, um, and he looked around and he's like, if I leave it at $50, will you return it? I was like, no, sir, I will not. Take my money here. Take my card right now. Take my money. I'll take it right now. Even if it's like not even good conditions, I'll take it. $50. Hello. So, and then in the end, when he did everything on the computer, it came out to $45. This chair, guys. Like I did a video, I did a TikTok, and I was like, Does finding a good sale as a does it count as a testimony? Because this was a testimony. I had prayed for this, guys, and it happened. So I got it for $45 and I was like, let me make space in the car. Like, I need to take this right now. Take my money, like, forget about everything else. So I took it and I was like, okay, God, I hear you. I hear you. I see. You gave me the microphone. You gave me the chair. You gave me everything. Now I just need to start. So, weeks passed, and honestly, it was just something that I had to do. I thought about it. I thought about it. I was like, but what am I going to speak? What am I going to do? And I even asked you guys on my stories, what do you guys want to hear in these podcasts? And people were like, just relatable content, content that we can relate to, content that we can get inspired or the word. And that is all I want to do here. I really just want to talk to you guys and talk about things that aren't really talked within the church at times. And oh, and also break, time out. This will be a bilingual podcast. A bilingual or more like a Spanglish podcast. So if you don't know English, I'll teach you English. If you don't know Spanish, I'll teach you Spanish. You teach me and I teach you. That's how we'll roll, okay? But aquí vamos a hablar de los dos lenguajes, okay? So, um, I want to bring people of all sorts of all kinds of people, honestly. I want to bring people, and I am going to bring people that don't speak English, people that don't speak Spanish, but I want for this to be a safe space where we get to talk about things that aren't really talked within churches or within the Spanish church, because there's a lot of things that aren't really talked about in the Spanish church. And I want this place to be a place where young people, young adults get inspired as well. There's so many things that us as young Christians need to step up and do in this society, in this world, in this country that we live in, because something that I always say is, how do we expect, let's say, the school system or the government or anything else to change if we are not stepping in? Obviously, if us Christian people are not stepping into these schools, into these governing positions, into these places of important roles, how do we expect to see God move within there if we're not going, if we're not doing it, if we're not applying, if we're not involved? I think it is so important for the church to really rise up and get involved in their community, get involved in their government, get involved in the schools, because no one else is going to go to your children's school and speak about God's word if you don't. And it all starts at home. Yes, I am very mindful of that. And I am very firm on that idea that it all starts at home. But it is super important for us, the Christian church, to also rise up and be part of this society, be part of this government, be part of the school system, be part of everything going around and going on. Because if we don't do it, you know who is going to do it. If we're not part of politics out there, you know who is. And yes, separation of church and state, but we know what is going on out there. So I want this podcast to be a place where we get inspired, we get motivated, where we are also where we're confronted, because I feel like many times we all want to hear the good stuff, the nice stuff. Yes, I'm doing that. Yes, tell me more, tell me more. But what about that friend that tells you that you're doing the wrong thing? I want to be that friend. And I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings at some point, but it will happen. So yeah, I just am super excited for everything, how everything is working. I am super excited that you're here. And if you want to support me in any way, just support me, please, with your prayers. Support me that every day that I come on here, it is not me talking. It is not just me and my emotions or my mental state, where whether that day I'm feeling great or feeling grumpy, but that every day that I come on here, it's God talking. God talking directly to your heart, God talking directly to that person who may need it. So if you want to support me in any way, support me with your prayers, sharing the podcast to that person that you know needs to hear this, sharing that podcast to someone who may need it, who may want to start their journey with God, and just follow along. I am so happy that you're here. Estoy tan feliz de que todos estén aquí porque eso no fuera posible sin ni uno de ustedes. Va a ser un tiempo bonito y estoy feliz porque yo sé que Dios es el que va respaldando eso. Dios es el que comenzó la obra y Él mismo la terminará también. I know that He's the one that started the good works and He will finish it because whenever He starts something, He finishes it. And when He does, when He finishes something, He does it perfectly. So thank you, everyone. Gracias a todos por los que están escuchando, que llegaron hasta este momento. I am super excited to see what is to come. These podcasts will come out every Monday because I want it to be a podcast that you can tune into going to work, going to school, starting your week, starting your day, and something that you can take along for the whole week. And for you to be the church out there, for you to be the ambassadors of God here on earth, and for you to shine your light wherever you go. Así que gracias a todo. Thank you. I am super excited. I cannot wait for this journey to begin. So for now, this is the goodbye. We will be back soon next week with a new episode. We're going to talk about my testimony. We're going to talk about a lot of other topics that I have. And I just can't wait to hear your feedback, to hear your questions again. I want this to be not just a place where I bring all the creatives or all the questions and topics. I want this to be a place where you are also involved. So if you have any questions, please send them over. Please write them down. Please comment them. And I am going to read them and we will discuss them and we will learn. So thank you for today. I am your host, Eva Salas. And do not forget, for anything in the world, to shine your light wherever you go. Bye, guys.